Hello and welcome to Technically Explained. In this video, we are going to discuss the current divider rule. Now, we have a current source over here and we have resistances R1 and R2 in parallel. So we can apply current divider rule to find the currents I1 and I2. Now, I1 is equal to R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into IS, because whenever we are finding the branch currents, the I1 will be equal to the opposite resistor divided by the sum of resistors multiplied by the source current. Similarly, I2 will be equal to R1 divided by R1 plus R2 and again multiply by this IS. Now, how to derive this? Now we know that this V1 will be equal to V2 because both are in parallel. Also, if I say that voltage across this current source, or I say that the voltage source is Vs will also be equal to V1 and V2. Fine. So we have Vs equal to V1 equal to V2. Why? Because all are in parallel. V1 is parallel to V2, which is parallel to the Vs. Now what will be Vs equal to? Vs will be equal to Is and the equivalent resistance, which is denoted by Req. Fine. So this will be what Vs will be equal to. Vs will be equal to Is multiplied by the equivalent resistance. Now this equivalent resistance Req is equal to the parallel combination of R1 and R2. So we have Vs equal to Is into parallel combination of R1 and R2. Now the parallel combination of R1, R2 is, so we are going to say Vs is equal to Is. Parallel combination of R1, R2 is R1 multiplied by R2 divided by R1 plus R2. Fine. So let me name it as equation 1. Fine. So this is your Vs. Now we are interested in finding I1 and I2. First of all, if I want to find the I1, if you can see over here, this I1 will be equal to V1 divided by R1, and this V1 is equal to Vs, so I can write Vs divided by R1. Fine. Because V1 and Vs and V2 are in parallel combination, so they all are equal. So I1 is V1 divided by R1, which is equal to Vs divided by R1. Fine. And Vs is our this value. This is our Vs. So I'm going to put Vs over here. That is Is R1 R2 divided by R1 plus R2. This is your Vs, and then we have divided by R1. Fine. So this is going to give me I1. I1 is equal to Is R1 R2 divided by R1 plus R2, and let me change this to the multiplication. So this is division and we have 1 over here. If I change it to multiplication, this is, I'm going to take the reciprocal of this. So this will be 1 divided by R1. Now this R1 and R1 is going to cancel out, and we are going to have I1 is equal to Is R2 divided by R1 plus R2. This is your equation number A. This is the equation for the I1. And if you can have a look, this is the same equation as this thing. R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into Is. We have R2 divided by R1 plus R2 into Is. Now again I can find the I2 as well. I2 will be equal to V2 divided by R2. And again V2 is equal to Vs. So we are going to have Vs divided by R2. And again Vs is your this value, which is equation number 1. So let me put the Vs over here. So we are going to have Vs is equal to Is R1 into R2 divided by R1 plus R2, and then divided by the R2. So if I solve this, we are going to have Is R1 into R2 divided by R1 plus R2 multiplied by 1 by R2. R2 and R2 is going to be cancelled out, and we are going to have Is divided by R1 plus R2 into R1. Fine. So this is your I2, and I can write this as I2 is equal to R1 divided by R1 plus R2 into Is. So this is your equation number B. So equation number A and equation number B, and this is the same equation as this thing. Fine. So equation number 1A and equation number 2 is your current divider rule. So you can find the I1 and I2 using this current divider rule, and that's how we can derive it. Thank you. If you like my video, please subscribe to my channel.